Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestle News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well and having a good Tuesday so far. So there is a ton of news stories to get into. Of course, it's the day after Monday Night Raw, which means there's always a ton of news to get to. But yesterday was a very noteworthy day and newsworthy day, so let's get straight into the stories. The first being the construction of the new and updated WWE ThunderDome at Tropicana Field. Now, of course, last night's edition of Monday Night Raw was the last episode of WWE television at this current version of the Thunderdome at the Amway Center in Orlando, Florida, because Friday night's edition of SmackDown will see the first edition of WWE programming inside the new WWE Thunderdome at Tropicana Field, and we've got some images and videos now of what this new version of the WWE Thunderdome will look like. Now, Florida sports reporter John Alba has revealed a new video and photos of the WWE ThunderDome construction at Tropicana Field in St. Petersburg, Florida. Now, we're going to go to the video in a second, but as I previously just mentioned, WWE will begin their new residency at the domed stadium, home of MLB's Tampa Bay Rays, beginning this Friday on SmackDown on Fox. Now, last night's edition of Monday Night Raw, as I mentioned, was the final show to air from the Amway Center in Orlando, Florida. Now, there's still no official word right now when it comes to WWE's residency at Tropicana Field as to when it will end, but all upcoming Raws, SmackDowns, and WWE pay-per-view events will air from the Dome Stadium, known as the Trop, to fans of the Tampa Bay Rays. We know that TLC is going to air from there later this month. Royal Rumble is kind of up in the air. I don't know if we've heard anything about that. There's been discussion about fans potentially attending. What would that look like in the WWE Thunderdome? Of course, it's a much bigger area and a much bigger space for WWE to use. In this version of the Thunderdome, I could see it being, if anything, a bigger version of the Capitol Wrestling Center that we've seen with NXT, in the sense that, yes, you still have the virtual fans, but you do have a select amount of actual paid WWE fans in attendance as well. So we'll have to wait and see. As I mentioned, I'm very excited. I'm super excited for what it looks like. I think this is going to be the WWE Thunderdome that we've seen at the Amway Center, but even bigger. I mean, the capacity for this Dome Stadium is something like, was it 40, 50, maybe 60,000? It's huge. It's huge potentially. And the fact that we know WWE when it comes to production and when it comes to sets, and the WWE Thunderdome at the Amway Center is a pretty incredible feat of engineering. So to do that on a bigger scale with bigger space and the pyrotechnics, the lasers and the virtual fans, it's going to look great. So I'm really excited for how it's going to look like on SmackDown on Friday and going forward for the events like TLC, possibly the Royal Rumble, Raw, etc. So very excited for that. Nevertheless, as I mentioned, we've got a couple of videos that were shared by John Alba from Florida, and also Justin Barrasso from Sports Illustrated. So let's get into what these videos look like to give you a better look of what the new version of the WWE Thunderdome is going to look like. So next, we've got to talk about what a lot of people are talking about, which is, of course, Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch welcoming the birth of their baby girl. Becky Lynch and Seth Rollins have welcomed their daughter into the world. Becky Lynch took to Instagram yesterday and revealed that she has given birth to a baby girl named Rue. Welcome to the world, Rue. You are the love of our lives. #and new. Becky Lynch wrote on the Instagram post. Lynch, of course, has been away from WWE since announcing that she was pregnant back in May after Money in the Bank. Seth Rollins, the father of the child, is currently on hiatus. He's currently on paternity leave to be with Becky as they welcome birth of their child. But he's expected to be back early next year, January time. We mentioned the Royal Rumble there in Tropicana Field. That's been considered maybe a time that Seth Rollins will return to WWE programming. As far as Becky Lynch, when will she return to programming? I'm not even sure it's really a discussion worth having. I've seen a lot of people on social media. This is so weird, social media, and we'll get onto weird in a second with this story. But there's been a lot of discussion. Oh, so, right, she's given birth. When is she coming back? Give her time and space. She has just given birth to another human being. Let Becky Lynch have as much time as she needs off. She'll come back if and when she feels like it. So the big thing you have to say here is obviously congratulations to Becky Lynch and Seth Rollins on the birth of their first child. Absolutely made up for them like everyone else is. It's an incredibly heartwarming picture and moment that they've allowed to share with us on social media. And again, huge congratulations to them both. What I did want to point out And I'm not one to throw shade or heat at other people online and other people in, pro wrestling reporters. I'll say what I think in terms of the credibility of their reports and the nitpick some of the details of them. But I don't like to attack people, and I don't think this is attacking people. Nevertheless, there was a tweet by Fox Sports analyst, WWE analyst, former, was it managing editor or chief editor, whatever his title was, of Pro Wrestling Sheet, Ryan Satin. Now, of course, his job now is to cover WWE for Fox Sports. I don't have an issue with that. I've seen some people say, oh, he doesn't cover AEW and all that kind of stuff. He hasn't mentioned the AEW Impact relationship. Well, in fairness, that's not his job. And if he's a WWE guy and he's a WWE analyst, more power to him. He gets paid to do that. Great job. I'm sure he's very happy doing what he's doing. But he announced the birth of Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch's first child, and then posted the weirdest, most bizarre tweet of an attempt at humour, because that's obviously what it was, in that he said, I hope Seth Rollins does this to the umbilical cord once Becky Lynch gives birth to the child. And it was a gif of Seth Rollins swinging the WWE World Heavyweight Championship around above his head at WrestleMania 31. As I mentioned, this was an attempt at humour. I understand it was an attempt at humour, a bad attempt at humour. I mean, I don't think it was funny, to be honest. But it was just weird and creepy, and he has since deleted the tweet because he got a lot of backlash for it, rightfully so, because people just went, what is that? Why have you done that? That is just so weird, so bizarre, and just odd, and just, again, not funny, and just creepy. Ultimately, it was creepy. And I think when it comes to this, look, we have had some horrific stories over the last sort of 18 months, and you still see them pop up on social media from time to time, about when people take pro wrestling fandom too far. When it's people, I mean, the Sonya Deville case, of course, but when you have people, posting weird messages, or sending stuff to people's houses, or knowing where people live. And obviously this isn't on the level of that, but it's just inappropriate. It's just inappropriate. And this is a guy that's working for Fox Sports as an analyst of WWE, and he's doing weird, creepy stuff like this. The fact that we're reporting that Becky Lynch and Seth Rollins have welcomed the child, their first child, the only reason we're reporting this is because they've been willing to share that information with us. They don't have to share that information with us. It's their private information. They've been willing and gracious enough to share the information with us, and then you've got people like Ryan Satin posting weird, creepy stuff like that. I just found it very odd. Now, I'm not like other people. I don't want to cancel Ryan Satin or anything like that. I just found it very creepy, and just, again, it was an attempt at humour, but I was just very perturbed by it. I was just like, okay, very, very odd, very odd. But I thought I'd just mention that there because it was worth talking about. Let's talk about something else. Talk about AEW. Of course, we cover WWE and AEW news here on the news videos every day. And we've had an announcement that Shaquille O'Neal is to appear on AEW Dynamite this week. AEW has announced that NBA legend Shaquille O'Neal will appear on this week's episode of AEW Dynamite on TNT. This was confirmed by AEW's official Twitter account, and is stated that Shaq will address AEW fans in a segment with AEW announcer Tony Schiavone. Shaq's involvement when it comes to All Elite Wrestling, of course, was teased last month when we had a segment with Cody Rhodes, who was interrupted by the debuting Jade Cargill. And Cargill mentioned that although Cody Rhodes calls himself, quote, a giant killer, there was nothing giant about him. Cargill said she happens to know who the real giant is, and statement made by Cody are an echo loud enough to wake him up. Cargill then revealed that the giant she was talking about was indeed Shaquille O'Neal, NBA legend. Brandy Rhodes then confronted her on stage. We've seen a little bit of back and forth between Brandy Rhodes and Jade Cargill recently. Jade Cargill attacked Brandy Rhodes backstage a couple of weeks ago on Dynamite. By all accounts, Shaq was backstage at AEW's Full Gear pay-per-view on November 7th, but he didn't make an appearance on the show. When it comes to Shaq's involvement in AEW, of course, this is all part of his new TNT deal. He's a popular panelist on Inside the NBA and actually does the coverage of the NBA on TNT. And when he signed a new deal with TNT back in August, it was out there that Shaquille O'Neal was going to be involved in AEW somehow. It was actually in the contract and the press release. Shaq is going to be involved in AEW. So his involvement was no surprise, certainly to me. I don't know other people. It was no surprise to me that he was going to be involved in AEW going forward. And again, this has always been my opinion on this. If it's different, you can let me know in the comment section below. That's what the community is about here at WrestleNews 365. I don't have a problem with it. Do I want to see Shaq compete in an AEW ring? Of course I don't. I don't think many people do. Obviously, the people that do are the casual fans that might not be a fan of AEW. They're a fan of NBA. They're a fan of basketball. They're a fan of SHAQ. And hearing that SHAQ's going to be competing inside of a wrestling ring, they might watch AEW because they like Shaquille O'Neal, because they like the NBA, or they like basketball. That's the reason they're doing this. Do I, as a pro wrestling fan, want to see SHAQ compete in the ring at his age? No, of course I don't. Nevertheless, I understand it. It's business. This is how pro wrestling has worked for years. And people can complain. Pro wrestling fans have this thing about celebrities and other athletes coming in. Oh, they're taking spots away from other people. My response to that is always, yeah, but can people on the AEW roster draw like SHAQ can? Or do they have the crossover appeal that SHAQ does? No. Will they get the press that SHAQ does? No. And this is why pro wrestling companies do it, and they'll always do it. And this is why I don't have a problem with it, because business-wise, it does make sense. Look at Mike Tyson. I mean, he's the gold standard of it, isn't he? Mike Tyson, WrestleMania 14. Do you think WrestleMania 14 would have been as big without Mike Tyson being there? He was the hottest star on the planet when it comes to sports at the time, for his various controversies and him just being Mike Tyson. Now, is SHAQ Mike Tyson in his prime? Of course he isn't. Of course he isn't. But AEW's looking for some mainstream coverage. They're looking to actually appease their relationship with TNT. They've got to keep TNT happy. And look, AEW gets a bit of coverage. That's why they're doing it. Again, I don't necessarily have a problem with it. I don't mind the attraction. I don't mind AEW trying to get a bit of fringe celebrity. I thought it was too far back in the day when Impact would do it with stars from the Jersey Shore, and I mean like proper like D-list celebrities. People know who SHAQ is. SHAQ is still a big name. He's still a big draw, especially on TNT when it comes to basketball. So, look, again, I don't have a problem with it. Would I really want to see it? Do I have a massive desire to see SHAQ compete in an AEW ring as a pro wrestling fan? Of course I don't. I think the most hyped I was probably to see SHAQ inside of a wrestling ring is when we thought we were going to get SHAQ versus The Big Show all those years ago at WrestleMania 33. Never happened. I think that was the time, and now, all these years later, do I want to see SHAQ compete? No. But it's business. That's ultimately what it is, and I don't have a problem with business decisions. I think they do make sense financially, so there you go. That's just. It looks like we're going to get SHAQ in AEW very, very soon. So let's go back to WWE and talk about Jaxson Ryker, because Jaxson Ryker has returned to WWE TV. Now, Jaxson Ryker returned to WWE TV during last night's pre-Raw main event tapings. Ryker appeared in the show opening segment with Elias, which was interrupted by WWE 24/7 champion R-Truth. It looks like going forward, WWE has paired Elias and Jaxson Ryker together for main event and possibly going forward on Monday Night Raw. I don't think they would just do this segment, not to do anything more of it when it goes forward on Monday Night Raw. Now, of course, why is this newsworthy? Well, of course, this is Jaxson Ryker's first WWE TV appearance since the Forgotten Sons were pulled from SmackDown in the middle of a big push that the faction was getting on the show following pro-Donald Trump comments that Jaxson Ryker made on Twitter back in May. Now, as noted before, as we found out on SmackDown on Friday, Ryker's former tag team partners, Wesley Blake and Steve Cutler, were brought back to WWE TV during SmackDown on Fox last week in a new alliance with Baron Corbin, or King Corbin. There had been talk of WWE possibly releasing Jaxson Ryker, but it looks like they found a new home for him on Monday Night Raw in this pairing with Elias. Was this surprising? Absolutely, it was surprising. I think a lot of people thought that Jaxson Ryker's days in WWE were numbered. For me, it was always a very difficult situation. It is a very difficult situation because in the grand scheme of things, did Jaxson Ryker do anything wrong? It's a tough one. It is a tough one because where do you draw the line, I suppose? Can you fire someone and you can release someone because of political support that they did? If you look at his comments when it comes to the Donald Trump stuff, and believe me, I ain't a Donald Trump supporter at all. I highly disagree with his politics and everything like that. It just, don't get me started. This isn't a political video. But nevertheless, could you actually release him because he said, I like Donald Trump or I voted for Donald Trump? No, you couldn't. That's the difficult part of it. And obviously, there was a ton of heat for him backstage because of it. There was reports saying they didn't even want him in the locker room. People didn't want to talk to him or be anywhere near him, which, again, that's their right as well. I kind of felt that he would just disappear and eventually see out his contract. I didn't know if WWE could actually release him because you do have people on the roster making political statements on the other side of things. It's a really difficult situation. Nevertheless, to be honest, when I saw the other members of the Forgotten Sons arrive on SmackDown on Friday, I felt Jackson Ryker, his days in WWE are numbered, and I don't think he'll come back. I didn't think WWE would release him. I thought that he would just see out his contract because WWE just wouldn't want the negative reaction from the locker room and on social media. But I did do a video yesterday talking about WWE potentially signing Tessa Blanchard, and my point was in that video, WWE doesn't care about negative PR. They genuinely don't. Look at all the controversies they've had over the last 18 months alone, let alone their entire history. They don't care about bad PR, hence why Jackson Ryker's back on TV. They don't care. So we'll have to wait and see what this means. Obviously, there was rumours that Elias was going to get a character changed, and doesn't look like it. He's playing guitar last night. Maybe the character change was the fact that Jackson Ryker is going to be a bodyguard of sorts. We'll have to wait and see. Surprising, very surprising, that I felt that it would be risky to morale. I don't envy Jackson Ryker being in that locker room at the moment and the heat that he probably has, and it can be up to you to decide if he deserves it or not. Nevertheless, it's a difficult situation, but I didn't expect to see him back. I really didn't. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with him going forward. Now, there was some discussion last night about the reason that Alexa Bliss missed Monday Night Raw. Of course, she was absent from last night's episode on the USA Network, and a lot of people were saying, well, what's going on there? Obviously, she's heavily featured in with the Bray Wyatt and Randy Orton storyline. Where was Alexa Bliss? Well, she missed last night's edition of Monday Night Raw because Alexa Bliss is currently in LA. She's working on the upcoming Punky Brewster reboot. WWE Hall of Famer and producer Devon Dudley revealed in a new cameo video that he has been in Los Angeles to help produce the Punky Brewster reboot. He noted that Alexa Bliss and Charlotte Flair are there with him to shoot this reboot. He said, quote, "I'm out here producing and helping and choreographing just like I do in the WWE right now. This looks to be the 10-episode Punky Brewster revival that was first announced in the summer of 2019 and is scheduled to air on NBC Universal's Peacock network," which, of course, WWE pretty much does an advert for every edition of Monday Night Raw, it feels like. So the fact that two Raw superstars in Charlotte Flair and Alexa Bliss are participating in this project hardly comes as a surprise. Now, NBCU, Flair, Bliss, and Dudley aren't the only WWE connections to the show, as actor, former WWE writer, and noted big WWE fan Freddie Prinze Jr. is starring in the reboot as the ex-husband of Punky, who is still played by Soleil Moon Frye. Punky Brewster originally aired in the 1980s and was one of the most popular sitcoms from that era. I must say, I never heard of this sitcom. It's a bit before my time. Nevertheless, it explains why Alexa Bliss was not on Raw last night. So nothing to get worried about, nothing to get concerned about. She's not injured or any issues like that. She was just out in LA filming an outside project that obviously WWE does have a bit of a hand in. Now, can we talk about Matt Riddle? Because there is a ton of people talking about Matt Riddle after that edition of Monday Night Raw last night, specifically his segments on the show. Now, one of the big topics coming out of Raw last night was Riddle, this new gimmick which seems to be a case of WWE booking him to be purposely annoying to several talents. Now, Riddle coming out of Raw was currently trending at the top list of Twitter and was trending for most of the show, and most of the comments weren't entirely positive when it comes to this new direction of Matt Riddle. Riddle. He doesn't have a first name anymore. He appeared in 2 backstage segments on Raw last night, one where he interrupted Ricochet and Dana Brooke to look for the Hurt Business and offer them some Bro-Nuts, donuts. Get it? It was a Bro-Nuts brand of donuts that he was carrying around. Riddle then later interrupted Jeff Hardy as Hardy prepared for his non-title match with WWE United States Champion Bobby Lashley. In the moment that he was getting a lot of attention for on Twitter last night, Riddle proposed that he and Jeff team up to form a tag team called the Hardy Bros. There was no mention of AEW star Matt Hardy and his legendary tag team with his brother, just a subtle reference with the Hardy Bros name. Riddle even suggested they use Broetry in Motion as their tag team finisher. I get that Matt Riddle says bro all the time, but these bro puns are killing me. I feel like part of my soul dies every time I hear it. It's so frustrating and annoying at this point. And I wasn't the only one, or the people online weren't the only one that seemed annoyed, because Jeff Hardy himself seemed annoyed at Matt Riddle as he was trying to get ready for the match with Lashley. Riddle noted how Hardy walked off without trying some of the Bro-Nuts, but seemed pleased because he meant more donuts for him. I mean, I don't know what this gimmick is. I really don't know what this gimmick is. I know the purpose of the gimmick felt like it was to be purposely annoying. I wouldn't be stunned if it wasn't. I wouldn't be stunned if this is, again, Vince McMahon and Bruce Pritchard. This is how we're going to get you over, pal. This is how you get to the next level. And this is baffling because, first of all, Matt Riddle drops his first name. He's just Riddle now in WWE. And the reason why he dropped that first name, the reports coming out at the time is Vince McMahon loves Riddle. He loves him. He absolutely loves him. And this is just a way to get a new serious version, right? A new more serious version, a harder version of Riddle in WWE. Because after he had that match with Sheamus, which he lost, by the way, as the qualifier for Survivor Series, he said, Vince McMahon loved the match. He loved the physicality of the match. He wants Riddle to be this serious MMA fighter, serious, tough character. And what's he doing weeks later? He's doing even more bro puns than he was doing before. He's carrying around donuts that are called bro nuts. How on earth is this good creative? How on earth is this good creative? It's not. If I'm Matt Riddle right now, I am pulling my hair out because I'm going, I am on such a fast path to mediocrity in WWE. And that might sound harsh, but it's true. And I spoke about Trey Miguel. I've spoken about Trey Miguel extensively over the last few days, as it's rumoured that he's considering offers from both WWE and AEW. And I said about Trey Miguel, why would you go to WWE right now? Because he is the prototypical person that would do unbelievably well in NXT. He would thrive in NXT, but then he would go to Raw and SmackDown and he would fail. He would fit this pattern that we have seen over and over and over again of getting over in NXT with a certain character, a certain style, a certain just presentation, and he would go to Raw and SmackDown. That would get pulled apart, changed completely, be broken down to be built back up in the image of Vince McMahon and Bruce Pritchard, and he would fail. And it looks like Riddle's just the latest example of this. A character change that just doesn't work and is just baffling and is such a departure from what got him over in the first place in NXT. And he's just the latest person. Riddle, Keith Lee, Shinsuke Nakamura, Andrade, Aleister Black, EC3, The Revival. I could go on and on and on with these stars that seem like they could be big deals in NXT because they're presented in a certain way that gets them over, and they go to Raw and SmackDown and they're just changed completely. Oh, you need to be changed for Raw and SmackDown. That wouldn't work in our audience on Fox and USA Network. Oh, do me a favour. Oh, do me a favour. It's just ridiculous at this point. It's just ridiculous. And I understand that some people, their argument to what we were given last night when it comes to Matt Riddle will say, well, it got people talking. People were talking about it. He was trending worldwide. He was trending because it was bad. He was trending because it was bad. It was a bad presentation and it was annoying. And it's just, I mean, I throw my hands up in here when it comes to this latest example of the disconnect from NXT to the main roster. And that's what it is. People will say NXT is a third brand. It obviously isn't. That system does not work. That system does not work. Because if it worked, you wouldn't have to change anything from the transition from NXT to Raw or SmackDown. Yet they change everything. Which says to me, Vince McMahon doesn't like what's going on in NXT. Because he has to change it. He has to change it. He has to get his fingerprints over it. And it's just, as a pro wrestling fan and as a fan of WWE, I'm so tired of seeing the same cycle be repeated over and over again when it comes to promising NXT talent going to the main roster. And that's the reason they can't create new stars. Because the process is ultimately flawed and is broken. That you have people like Matt Riddle on TV saying bro 5 million times, which is not a number, but it might as well, and carrying around bro nuts. Just honestly. So let's also talk about Eva Marie, because of course there was a story a couple of weeks ago saying that Eva Marie had signed a new deal with WWE. She was returning to WWE soon, and essentially her return was imminent on Monday Night Raw, but conspicuous by her absence, we've seen no Eva Marie so far on WWE programming since that report. Well, according to a report by PW Insider, Eva Marie is still reportedly listed as a member of the WWE roster on internal listings. Now, as I mentioned, it was reported back in mid-October that Marie was set to return to WWE, possibly as soon as the 2020 WWE Draft edition of Monday Night Raw on October 12th. That obviously didn't happen, and there's been no real update as to what's going on with Eva Marie, but as I mentioned, PW Insider has reported Marie is still listed as a member of WWE's internal roster. She has signed a WWE deal, but she's not been officially assigned to any brand, or we don't really know what the plans are when it comes to Eva Marie in WWE right now. PW Insider has mentioned that Marie has been spotted several times at the WWE Performance Center in Orlando since the past September. So it's been 2 months, 3 months nearly, and we still have no real update as it comes to what's going on with Eva Marie. So what is going on? What's going to happen? I still think this is what I kind of thought that was going to be the situation with Eva Marie. This kind of report just essentially says, you know, that report that came out saying that Eva Marie had signed with WWE, it's legit. She has signed with WWE. I think it made a lot of people look bad because people said, Eva Marie, they've signed with WWE, she signed with WWE, she's going to appear on Raw. It didn't happen, and then a lot of people took flack online going, another wrong report, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. This report comes out, which is actually separate. I think it was Cultaholic that first reported that Eva Marie was returning. PW Insider has reported, you know, it's absolutely right. She is a member of the WWE roster. She just doesn't have anything, or WWE doesn't know what to do at the moment. I still think she's going to be involved in this whole Angel Garza deal. We've seen all of these vignettes and promos by Angel Garza over the last few weeks on Raw, talking about his secret admirer, or he's secretly admiring someone and he's interested in someone. I think it has to be Eva Marie. It just makes sense at that point. And I like the pairing. I like the pairing of Angel Garza and Eva Marie. I think that works. It makes total sense for me. So we'll have to wait and see. But it looks like Eva Marie is returning. We just don't know when. We just don't know when and what the situation is when it comes to Eva Marie. Now, speaking of Angel Garza, let's talk about his former tag team partner Andrade, because it has been reported about possible plans to pair up Charlotte Flair and her fiancé Andrade in WWE storyline on TV soon. It was reported yesterday by the reputable Twitter account WrestleVotes there has been internal discussion of doing an on-screen pairing with Flair and Andrade when they both return to TV. Of course, they're both off TV right now. But the idea behind the pairing would be to use Charlotte Flair's star power, of course a WrestleMania main eventer, remember, to help elevate the former United States champion into the main event scene. Now what's interesting about this is Andrade was considered by many, and all of these reports have come out several times, to be a Paul Heyman guy. Paul Heyman was a big advocate of Andrade, hence why he got a big push when Paul Heyman was the executive director of Raw. Since Paul Heyman's departure from that position, Andrade has been not exactly well featured on WWE TV. He was in that tag team with Angel Garza and their 10 million matches with the Street Profits on Monday Night Raw. But we haven't seen Andrade on WWE TV since mid-October. He lost a match to Angel Garza and he was off TV. Now, at the time, it was reported that he underwent a minor elective procedure shortly after the WWE draft back in October, which is why he was not officially drafted. He was then scheduled to be out of action for about a month, and word is WWE wanted to push him when he came back. So we'll have to wait and see what it comes to Andrade going forward. Now it must be said that this is only a thing that has been discussed. It's not anything confirmed. It's something that is being thrown around when it comes to the return of both Andrade and Charlotte Flair to WWE TV. Now, Charlotte Flair, of course, was drafted to Raw in the 2020 WWE draft, but has been away since about June from WWE TV after going on hiatus for some time off, some well-needed time off to heal up from various injuries and to have a cosmetic procedure, actually to fix a cosmetic procedure or issues with one in the past. There's no firm word as to when Charlotte Flair is going to be returning. It was expected, and it still is expected, she was going to be back before the end of the year, and of course for WrestleMania season. Is she going to be back in December? At this point, there's no need, I don't think, to be honest. I think start off the next year with a bang, start off the road to WrestleMania with the Royal Rumble with a bang, and have Charlotte Flair return around that period of time. She's going to be at WrestleMania. She's going to be at the Royal Rumble. So her return is fairly soon. Will it be before the end of the year? I don't know. Again, I don't know if it's really needed. Maybe that first show, that first Monday Night Raw from Tropicana Field, we'll have to wait and see. I'm not against the idea of Charlotte Flair pairing up with Andrade. It's different. It's real life. The best things in pro wrestling are real. When you can actually believe what you're seeing as a fan, it's so much more gratifying because that suspension of disbelief is so much easier to overcome. So I'm not totally against a partnership between Charlotte Flair and Andrade on WWE TV. I think, if anything, it could be a lot of fun. Could be interesting and would be certainly an evolution of both characters. So we'll have to wait and see with that, but I'm not totally against it. And finally, let's talk about The Undertaker. Of course, The Undertaker was a big topic of discussion with his final farewell to the WWE last month at Survivor Series, but now there's been discussion about what The Undertaker is going to do in WWE post his official retirement after Survivor Series last month. Now, Triple H has spoken on what The Undertaker could be doing in WWE going forward. This was on the NXT TakeOver War Games post-media show call, and during the call, Triple H was asked about if we can expect to see The Undertaker follow the likes of Shawn Michaels and make a full-time transition to a trainer at the WWE Performance Center. Whilst Triple H says that he wants The Undertaker to enjoy his retirement, he emphasized that any training appearances Taker is able to make are always impactful. He said, quote, "Anytime Taker is involved here, anytime he has walked through these doors, everyone that's here is better for it. They all come out of here with a different perspective, a fresh viewpoint. You know, he's one of the most knowledgeable guys that's ever been in the business, I believe. Even myself, I learn from him every time I'm around him. He is looking now, I believe, to move into the next sort of phase of his life." Now, while The Undertaker's one-off WWE Performance Center classes have left a positive influence on those involved, Triple H revealed that he and The Undertaker have indeed discussed the possibility of the dead man working as a full-time trainer at the Performance Center, specifically with the NXT brand. He said, quote, "We've talked a lot about it and being here and being involved with the future and getting more into that. I would like to believe he has earned to take a breath after his retirement for a moment, but we've actually just touched base in the last couple of days, and that is something coming out of the holidays that we will certainly be talking about in 2021, which is just one more reason to be excited about next year. Having him involved, I just can't stress enough how impactful that would be for everyone." Of course, I mean, I echo the thoughts of Triple H there, really. It's a given, isn't it? If The Undertaker can get involved at the Performance Center and the NXT brand, it is win-win for everyone involved. Is The Undertaker going to appear on NXT on USA? Absolutely not. I don't want him to, and I don't think he needs to. Nevertheless, having someone like The Undertaker involved would be massive, and I guess you've got to find out what to do with The Undertaker at this point. He is under a really long WWE contract. When he signed that new WWE deal in 2019, it was something ridiculous like 10 or 15 years. I'm not exaggerating. That's why they reported it at the time as a lifetime contract, because essentially it is a lifetime deal. So they've got to find something. WWE's got to get the most value out of their contract. I'm sure that contract was front-ended in the sense that the longer it goes on, and it's going to sound terrible, but the less use The Undertaker is to WWE later on, the less he will make. Nevertheless, he would be a huge addition to the NXT production side of things. He'd be a huge addition to the Performance Center. And I mentioned this when I talked about guys like Trey Miguel considering to sign with WWE. That law, that carrot of having to go to the WWE Performance Center and learn from the likes of legendary figures like Triple H, like Shawn Michaels, like The Undertaker. Can you imagine how interesting and how exciting that is for talent? You'd be like, well, I could go to another company, but if I go to WWE, I'm going to be in a class with The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels telling me how to wrestle and how to work. That knowledge is invaluable. It really is. So let's hope to see what happens with The Undertaker. I would think it'd be massive, and I guess the issue is relocating. He lives in Austin, Texas, relocating to Florida. Shawn Michaels was the same, and now he's all in when it comes to NXT. He runs the NXT UK brand. He has classes at the Performance Center. He's a producer for NXT. So, heck, The Undertaker could absolutely be the next person to do so. But of course, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts when it comes to the news stories that we've presented today? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, chatting about WWE, AEW, Impact Wrestling. There's a ton of Impact stuff to come today, so keep tuned for that. So leave a comment below. I'll do my best to respond and reply. We've got a great community here at WrestleNews 365 that's growing rapidly. So leave a comment below and get involved in the discussion. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button. It really does help us out here on YouTube. Go up the rankings, get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to WrestleNews 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right-hand corner of the screen right now. Or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video, along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.